A man goes out of his hometown with a friend. When starting from Mutanjiang, his wife Yukon helped pack the luggage. The man went out of the village with a sword, and he swore not to return Lin unless he killed him. Loyal bones are buried everywhere in the Green Mountains, so why bother to return them with horse leather? The wind is rustling and the water is cold. Once a strong man is gone, he will never return. Anyone who wants to do something heroic will probably always think of many such heroic words first. I don't know where I learned it from when I was a child. They seem to have become a part of our lives, casting another important aspect of our character. Once we need them, they will come out generously from our mother tongue, bringing the atmosphere of a faction of ancients going out to swear an oath. This may be called public opinion first or everything comes first. March 2nd, 1989 was the day when I traveled alone in China by bicycle. That morning, in order to keep everything simple and not to make a show, as a cultural reporter who had worked in the Mutanjiang Daily in Heilongjiang for 6 years, I deliberately avoided news and publicity. Depart from Mutanjiang Railway Station Square. As a result, many friends from all walks of life came and everyone was so moved and full of true feelings. Some people were saying goodbye to me. 2 doctor friends seized the time to tell me how to rescue myself in case of road injuries, snake bites, heat stroke, etc. It was 10 minutes before the departure time. Several friends from the Municipal Public Security Bureau suddenly remembered that it is best to have a letter of introduction from the Public Security Bureau along the way, especially since I also brought a hunting knife with me. Avoid getting into trouble, I was also suggested to bring a small caliber pistol for defense, but I rejected it. I think that in the face of too many unpredictable things, defense is impossible. The biggest thing at this time to be defensive is to be open and undefended. So, they immediately drove back to the bureau to process the letter of introduction, and I also postponed the original scheduled departure time from 8:30 to 9 o'clock. Although it was only delayed for half an hour, it seemed very long to me at this time. Because many relatives and friends are repeatedly exhorting with earnestness, and there are more and more people, I can't bear this kind of farewell scene even more. I can only cheer up and keep saying those strong and intense words, trying to use my pride to comfort the sincere hearts in front of me. In fact, I am a person who is most afraid of seeing off. All the friends from far away who have been to me know that I have a habit of grandly picking up the station when I come, but never seeing it off when I leave. My reason is, picking up a friend is a joyful thing, so it should be grand, but seeing off a friend is a sad thing, and it should be downplayed. It's the same when I go out to meet distant friends by myself. I am full of enthusiasm when I meet, and I never just. 9 o'clock finally arrived. I seized the opportunity, waved my hand, stepped on the bicycle and set off. On the first day of departure, as the first stop of the whole journey, it is Heilong County, 25 kilometers away. This is a ceremonial journey today. A bicycle team composed of 20 friends accompanied me, followed by 2 cars full of relatives and friends. Although I have betrayed my original intention, there is always a kindness that is hard to butt. My bike is particularly prominent among the entire convoy. This is a long-distance vehicle refitted from an old Tianjin Hunky brand car. The black paint of the body was polished off and regalvanized. Every key part of the car was reinforced, in order to resist wear and ensure safety when going up and down the mountain. The workshop was replaced by the foot brake system of the Jinlu brand car. It is convenient to lean on the bike for long distances. The corners of the handlebars are installed downwards, and all of them are wrapped with black tape to prevent slipping and cold. On the beams and inclined beams of the bike, a small air cylinder is fixed with a special screw card and a long-handled hammer for car repair. All of these were done by my friend who painted oil paintings and my mechanic Pan Yueling within 2 months. There was also a bag in the back of the car that contained many bicycle accessories, car repair tools, emergency medicines, down jackets, and raincoats. Waiting for the white canvas skydiving bag, the medicines were specially prepared for me by those 2 doctor friends, and the skydiving bag was sent by a friend of the flight team of the aviation school, plus the luggage on my back. The total extra weight was 30 many kilograms. This makes my bike look like a galloping horse or a nimble leopard. However, before leaving the city, a small unpleasantness happened. Due to the traffic congestion on the road, my car was heavy, and I was not very comfortable when I first rode it. I bumped into a car that was going forward slowly. The ground twisted into a twist. I just thought about its healthiness. The accompanying friends immediately gathered around and said, "It's nothing, nothing." But I saw the expressions on their faces, and I knew that they were all like me, and an ominous shadow passed over their hearts. Crashing a car before going out will remind people of the omen of folding the flag before going out in ancient times. Fortunately, my tall and unrestrained mechanic Peng didn't believe in evil, came over and put the car on the side of the road, and smoothed the twist to Rui Depaying with a few feet. My friends and I laughed, boarded the car and started on the road again. It's better to be young, and don't care about anything after a few minutes. 2.5 hours later, the team easily arrived at Hailing County. A group of friends from the news and cultural circles in the county had already set up a banquet and waited there. So, the friends raised their cups and cups, drinking for you with a sense of your loyalty. This kind of scene made me realize that in fact, many good men have a lofty aspiration to go anywhere, but the fetters and polishing of life make it slowly calm down helplessly, and once it is reawakened by today's scene, it will be immediately, the blood rushed, and everyone looked like a UN arranger. During the dinner, many friends sang with wine. When a friend who majored in vocal music from the County Cultural Bureau sang "Send Off Comrades in Arms, Embark on a Journey, Weep Silently," with camel bells ringing in my ears, perhaps because of his eloquent and expressive voice, he was so contagious that he finally took me to that place. A wife who had always been strong and happy sang and burst into tears. This was the first time she cried in the 2 months since I was preparing to travel, and she couldn't stop crying. I was 32 years old at the time, and my wife, a technical secondary school teacher, was 26 years old. We had been married for 3 years. In the first year, because of renting a house, she moved 5 times a year. She suffered a lot for this. In the second year, she went to Liaoning University to study for graduate school. And once I go, the future is unpredictable, and life and death are uncertain. Although she has been supporting me, she can't hold on at this time. At first, when I first mentioned the idea of taking a leave of absence without pay and traveling across the country, she probably thought I was joking, and happily agreed. In the next 2 months, my friends started to get busy for me, and she also followed in an ignorant way. She bought my travel clothes, shoes, and socks for me again and again. Because I don't want to be too ostentatious, I would rather go purer, more independent, and self-contained, so on the issue of travel expenses, I rejected the suggestions of some friends who wanted to sponsor me in my hometown and asked me to visit some enterprises and departments along the way to raise funds. My wife, she very understandingly gave me the 2,500 yuan she saved to buy a refrigerator with the meager wages of the two of us in the past 3 years. With the support from my friends, 100 and 200, I made up a total of more than 5,000 yuan for the annual travel expenses. Back then in the north this amount of money was not too small. My wife dared not let me take it with me, for fear of causing disaster, so she sent it to some literary friends I would reach along the way in advance according to the telegrams I took back at any time, or to me. Borrow it from there first, and then send it back by her. Fortunately, I have several poetry friends who I have met or have not met in every provincial capital, which also gave me great confidence. Seeing his wife crying sadly, the friends also felt very sympathetic. They toasted and persuaded her in turn, but at least they stopped. Afterwards, 2 close friends worried that her crying would affect my morale, so they accompanied her to the car and returned to Mutanjiang. In fact, I always regard my wife as a friend who understands and supports me first. Think of her as a wife. A friend is love and friendship, a wife is more of an obligation. In the evening, 4 good friends stayed with me. They are all 10 members of our small cultural club, including young Chinese painter Wei Wun, my oil painting mechanic Pan Yueling, my alumni, provincial newspaper reporter Feng Kuowen, and fine art photographer Zhang Xiao. That night, we received calls from friends back to Mutanjiang, saying that the 2 best friends who accompanied my wife back first were also the 2 backbones of the small cultural club, and the 2 had always been the most chic and humorous. The guy, Zhu Lingbo, a modernist poet and poetry critic, and Wang Wenjiang, a young oil painter known as the King of Color by the oil painting circles in Heilongjiang, both locked themselves in the room and cried until they returned to Mutanjiang. From this, I remembered Zhu Lingbo's 2 words when he commented on my poems: "The strongest heart is also the weakest." After reading it, I believe it. And when I put down the phone, I also believed it. Several times a friend asked me, "What is the most important thing in your life?" I always answered with a smile: the first is friends, the second is wine, the third is poetry, and the fourth is wife. Friends who are not familiar with me often don't understand, especially in front of my wife. They will quietly see my wife's reaction, or joke, "You have to say the other way around when we leave." They don't know that I already count my wife among my best friends. Second from left, Song Si student Han Bo, now working in Shanghai, a famous poet. If there is no such a group of friends in life, how can we live and forge ahead? At the end of 1986, Hainan announced the establishment of a province. I went there for 2 months and found a job. I promised to go to work after the Spring Festival, but I never went back home. Because of that trip, I realized more clearly that for a progressive life, the interpersonal environment created by a group of friends who can edify, inspire, and strengthen each other is far better than a place with only superior material life but no friends. The external environment is much more important. Friends, comrades, bosom friends, no matter where they are, this is always my first need. In the first few lines of heroic poems in this article, each line has the word return. It can be seen that return is still an important complex in the hero's heart. Therefore, I'd better put the first 2 lines of the poem change it to, the man went out of the hometown with his friend, and he had to return it if he didn't kill Lilin. For you, my friends. Farewell. Photo for friends from news and culture circles in Hailan City. Young people today feel that the beauty of the Mao Zedong era is a fairy tale, like a legend. Many people don't believe how there were so many good people and good deeds at that time, how everyone was patriotic, how they kept their doors open at night and did not pick up lost items, how there were small factories in the countryside, how they loved factories like home, how a family could support 3 or 4 children, how they could get the atomic bomb. The speech by Ye Jianying at the celebration of the 30th anniversary of the National Day published on the first page of People's Daily on September 30, 1979 is a very valuable and powerful footnote on whether the Mao Zedong era was good or not. It severely slaps those public figures who spread rumors to smear Chairman Mao's era. The following is an excerpt from this speech. Ye Shui said, "We have eliminated the system of exploitation, transformed the private ownership of small producers, established socialist public ownership of the means of production in an all-round way, and initially implemented the principle of from each according to his ability, to each according to his work, so that the world's population more than 1/5 of the Chinese people have entered a socialist society. This is the greatest and most profound change in the history of our country. In our country, the landlord class, the rich peasant class, and the capitalist class no longer exist as classes, and the vast majority of them who are able to work have been transformed into self-reliant laborers. Workers, peasants, intellectuals, and all patriots of all nationalities are the masters of the country. Our country is still a developing socialist country, the socialist system is not perfect, and the economy and culture are not yet developed. But our socialist system will certainly continue to overcome all difficulties and move forward, gradually tend to perfection, and will eventually create a level of productivity development higher than that of modern capitalist society. This is an irresistible historical trend that cannot be stopped by any force. The setbacks we have encountered in the past, the shortcomings that still exist in our work now, and the difficulties we will encounter in the future will not shake our iron-like scientific beliefs in the slightest." Ye Shui said, "We have established an independent and relatively complete industrial system and national economic system on the basis of the 1 poor and 2 white left over from the old China. In the past 30 years, China's water conservancy facilities, chemical fertilizers, and pesticides, rural electricity, agricultural there has been a great increase in machinery, etc. Agricultural production conditions have been significantly improved, and the farming system and farming methods have greatly improved. In 1978, the national grain output increased by 1.7 times compared with 1949, and the cotton output increased by 3.9 times. Our country's iron and steel, electric power, petroleum, coal, chemical industry, machinery, light textile and other industrial sectors have been greatly strengthened, and many new industrial sectors have developed from scratch, from small to large. In the vast interior and minority areas, there was almost no industry before liberation, but now a large number of industrial bases have been built. At present, there are 350,000 industrial enterprises in the country, and the fixed assets of enterprises owned by the whole people have reached 320 billion yuan, which is equivalent to 25 times the industrial fixed assets accumulated in the past century in old China. Counting from 1952, when we completed the task of restoring the national economy, to 1978, despite several ups and downs in my country's industrial development, the average annual growth rate still reached 11.2%. My country's transportation and post and telecommunications have also undergone new developments, which has changed the backward situation of traffic congestion in many places. With the growth of production, my country's domestic trade and foreign trade continue to expand. On the basis of the development of industry, agriculture, and commerce, the life of our people has been greatly improved compared with that before liberation. The great achievements made by various departments of our country's national economy in the past 30 years have laid a relatively solid material foundation for the great cause of realizing the four modernizations and established a reliable advancing position. Ye Shui said, "We have carried out the necessary transformation of the cultural and educational undertakings left over from the old China, and developed science, education, culture, news, publishing, health, sports, and other undertakings that serve the people. We have carried out among the people of the whole country the large-scale and sustained education of Marxism-Leninism, and Mao Zedong thought has greatly improved the political consciousness of the people. We already have a considerable contingent of socialist intellectuals. The number of students enrolled in our country's institutions of higher learning, middle schools, and primary schools has reached 210 million, which is 7 times higher than the peak year before liberation. My country's current level of science and technology is still far behind that of developed countries in the world, but after all, a series of emerging science and technology departments have been initially established from scratch. The successful tests of atomic bombs, hydrogen bombs, and missiles, the launch and recovery of artificial Earth satellites, and the artificial synthesis of bovine insulin all mark the achievements of my country's science and technology. We have carried out mass health campaigns and sports activities, implemented public medical care and cooperative medical care systems, eliminated or basically eliminated severe infectious diseases, greatly reduced the death rate of the population, and greatly improved the people's health. Ye Shui said, "We have overcome the isolation, blockade, interference, and provocation successively carried out by foreign aggressive forces against our country, and consolidated the country's independence. Our great motherland stands proudly among the nations of the world, and is increasingly becoming a force that cannot be ignored." The Chinese government and people resolutely implemented the diplomatic line and principles and policies formulated by comrades Mao Zedong and Zhou Enlai, opening up a new era in the history of my country's diplomacy. We initiated the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence with friendly countries. We have always opposed imperialism and old and new colonialism, safeguarded world peace and international justice, and supported the struggles of people of all countries for national independence and national liberation. Since the 1970s, we have followed Comrade Mao Zedong's strategic thinking on the division of the 3 worlds, united all the forces in the world that can be united, and jointly opposed the hegemony and war threats of superpowers, opened up a new situation in international struggles, and promoted the continuous development of the international situation to develop in a direction that benefits the people of the world. At present, there are 120 countries in the world that have established diplomatic relations with my country, and my country's economic and trade relations, cultural ties, and friendly exchanges with many countries and regions are constantly developing. It can be seen that these achievements in Ye Shui's speech all come from the struggle of the people in the Mao Zedong era in just 27 years from 1949 to 1976. This era is a beautiful era when our grandparents and fathers shed tears for the country and dedicate their youth. It is really brilliant. It is an era of rapid development and remarkable achievements in China, not a catastrophe, as some people say, is a crash. At that time, our country's workers, peasants, businessmen, and soldiers all developed very systematically, soundly, and beautifully. And all of this was jointly created and realized by the wise leadership of Chairman Mao and the people who firmly practiced Mao thought. This is the history of the people. No matter how much you slander and change your words later and call it a catastrophe, it will be difficult to change its greatness. Glow. The book Tombstone, published in Hong Kong, stated that 36 million people starved to death during the 3-year difficult period in our country. In recent years, Professor Sun Jingxian has published several articles in a row, analyzing the problem of population changes in my country during the difficult 3-year period, insisting on exposing the fact that the book Tombstone used a large number of forged, falsified, and extremely absurd data, clearly pointing out that 30 million starved to death is a major rumor, and is editing the book Returning History to the Truth. Comrade Li Chenggrui, an important historical witness and 93-year-old former director of the National Bureau of Statistics, wrote a preface to the book, effectively exposing and criticizing the lies of 30 million people starved to death and scientific research on the population truth in the three difficult period. In the past 2 years, Mr. Yang Jishan published Deviating from Reality and Inevitably Going to Fallacy on the Chinese website of the New York Times on September 17, 2012, and published Refuting 3 Starving to Death on the 12th issue of Yanhuang Chunkaiu in December 2013. It must be a rumor. In this rebuttal article, Professor Sun Jingxian analyzed the ins and outs of the major rumor of 30 million starved to death to set the record straight. 1. The facts of tombstone tampering and falsifying data are solid. On September 9, 2013, we published How Did the Rumor of 30 Million Starving to Death in China Come into Being in the Chinese Journal of Social Sciences, using facts to expose that the book Tombstone used a large number of forged and tampered data to create a major rumor that 36 million starved to death. The article lists 10 typical examples, exposing how Tombstone tampered with and falsified data. Mr. Yang Jishan defended our refutation in the article Refuting 30 Million Starved to Death is a Rumor, hereinafter referred to as rumor. Let's first analyze Mr. Yang's defenses about these 10 typical examples one by one. 1. Tombstone said that 3.5 million people died during the 3-year difficult period in the Fuling prefecture of Sichuan province. After checking the national census data in 1953 and 1964, we pointed out that the statement from Tombstone is very absurd. Regarding our disclosure, Mr. Yang had to admit in his article Rumors after unreasonably entangled some side issues, it is indeed unusual for such a high death rate in this case. It is understandable for Mr. Sun to raise doubts. I would also like to change this example in the book. In this way, although it is very reluctant and very secretive, Mr. Yang has admitted his mistake after all, and promised to willing to change. At that historical period, there were only a few million people in a prefecture-level administrative unit in our country. It is simply impossible that a prefecture with only a few million people starved to death 3.5 million people. When we read this passage from Tombstone, we immediately conclude that this must be wrong, and that checking the national census data is only to illustrate our judgment with actual numbers. With such a huge number of deaths as high as 3.5 million people, this number is equivalent to half of the total death toll in a year in the country under normal circumstances. Mr. Yang did not even do the simple work of checking the census data, but put that this extremely absurd number was written into Tombstone and became an important basis for 36 million starved to death nationwide and 10 million starved to death in Sichuan province. It is hard to believe that he can have a serious and responsible attitude in other statistics. Such an absurd number is by no means the only one in Tombstone. For example, Tongwei, Huining, Dingxi, Jingning counties, and Zihago areas with a total population of only 1.36 million in the 1953 national census unexpectedly nearly a million people starved to death during the 3-year difficult period. In 1958 only 6 in Linxia City, Gansu province, with a little more than 10,000 people, 60,971 people, more than 40,000 people, 41,381 people, died in 1959 and 1960. For the Tombstone, see pages 142 and 141 of the book. For the 1953 census data, see the Department of Population Statistics of the National Bureau of Statistics and the Third Bureau of the Ministry of Public Security, Compilation of Population Statistics of the People's Republic of China, 1949 to 1985, China Finance and Economics Publishing House, 1988 edition. The data of Linxia City can be found in Linxia Local Chronicles Compilation Committee, Linxia City Chronicles, Gansu People's Publishing House, 1995 edition, pages 197 to 198. We are in the process of verifying the book Tombstone. It was found that as long as someone said XXX million people starved to death in XX area on a certain occasion, Mr. Yang would write it into the book Tombstone, which became an important basis for him to confirm that 36 million people died of starvation in China. Chen Jinya, the former deputy director of the Rural Work Department of Anhui Province, stated in his report on the Fenyang issue that a total of 60,245 people died in Fenyang County in 1959 and 1960. This data was falsified in the Tombstone to say that in 1959 and 1960, a total of 60,245 people died of starvation in the county. Regarding our disclosure, Mr. Yang Jishan said in the article Rumors, in the context of Chen Jinya's speech, died refers to abnormal death and does not include normal death. Mr. Yang Jishin's statement is pure sophistry. Let us look at the original text of Chen Jinyu's report. From 1959 to 1960, the outflow of rural population in Fenyang County reached 11,196, accounting for 3.3% of the total rural population of 335,698. The number of sick people reached 102,994, accounting for 37.7% of the rural population. There were 27,735 cases of edema, 6,932 cases of uterine prolapse, and 8,237 cases of amenorrhea. According to statistics, in 1959 and 1960, a total of 60,245 people died, accounting for 17.7% of the rural population. Deputy Minister of Rural Work Department of Anhui Provincial Party Committee, Chen Jinya, leader of the Fenyang Working Group, later served concurrently as the first secretary of the Fenyang County Party Committee. Report on the Fenyang issue, February 1, 1961. Obviously, what Chen Jinya said here was a total of 60,245 people died refers to the total number of deaths. However, Tombstone changed a total of 60,245 people died to a total of 60,245 people died of starvation. In order to cover up this falsification, Mr. Yang deleted the key sentence 27,735 people with edema disease in the original report, because the data of 27,735 people with edema disease already negated his a total of 60,245 people starved to death of tampering. In addition, after our investigation, we found that Mr. Yang continued to falsify the data in the article rumors, and falsified the 2,404 households that died in the county in Chen Jinya's report to 8,404 households that died in the county. 3. According to the investigation report of the General Office of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China and the Working Group of the Henan Provincial Party Committee of the Communist Party of China, the total number of deaths in Xinjiang area in the Xinjiang incident was 436,882. This data was falsified in Tombstone as how many people died of starvation in Xinjiang. The statistics in June 1960 were 436,882 people. This data was further falsified in its deviating from reality and inevitably going to fallacy, hereinafter referred to as towards fallacy, which was further falsified as 1.08 million people died of starvation. I tossed the road. In 1989, the author was traveling on the 365-mile road to Harbin. It is exactly 365 kilometers from the starting point Mudanjiang to Harbin. I have been trekking among the mountains for the previous section, and I was tortured too hard by the mountain road. It wasn't until after Huifengling that the mountains became less and less low, and the scenery of deep mountains and old forests was replaced by people and fields along the way. I know that the vast Songnan Plain is approaching me. The provincial capital Harbin is located on that great plain, where I studied for 4 years in college. I toss the road. On the 365, far away from the mountains, the road becomes flatter. My mood at this time is like a bird that has broken through its cage. Looking back at those mountains that have been thrown far away as blue mist, there is still a bitter hatred in my heart, but at the same time, there seems to be a trace of loss. Thinking that the road has been tossing me for the past 2 days, but now that there are no mountains, it's my turn to toss the road. In the first 2 days, the road spells starting with the word 2 followed me all the time. Counting them one by one made me very upset. Today I am determined to go all out, and even the word 4 has been tossed out. If I see the road marker with the word 5, I will not stop. After passing Shanxi County and Mao'ershan Town, I didn't even bother to stop for lunch. I just ate some dry food that I brought with me on the side of the road. The flat road was what people wished for, and before dusk, I arrived at Yukwan Town at a strong and high speed, exceeding my goal of throwing the road steel. What makes me especially excited is that the asphalt surface of this road has been paved here from Harbin. When I saw the junction of the sandy road and the asphalt road outside the town, and saw the newly painted white lines on the asphalt road, I was so excited that I almost jumped out of the car, lay on the head of the asphalt road, and embraced it with open arms. This is the meeting point of roughness and flatness, backwardness and civilization, slowness and speed, difficulty and happiness. How can I not let me, who has come through all kinds of hardships, be ecstatic? For a few days, I was really afraid of walking on the mountain road. The mountains in this hilly area are not too big or small. There are hundreds of steps downhill, and 300 to 500 steps uphill. Not far. It would be great if you encounter a pure mountain like Hufengling. When you go up the mountain, you just push the cart and walk for 2 or 3 hours calmly. It's like a reward for the hard work you put in going up the mountain. Therefore, I like the A-shaped slope the most along the way. It's a pity that there are too few such places on this road, and more of them are the kind of U-shaped small slopes. You just rode downhill for tens of meters, and immediately exchanged for a cart uphill, just like the first give you a little sweetness, and immediately let you fall into torture like punishment. After riding such a road, I was sweating profusely and did not dare to drink water frequently. Every time I drank, the blood in my body seemed to be diluted once. After getting on the car, my legs would be weak for nearly 20 minutes, and I could not pedal. Son. I don't know if this phenomenon has been studied by the medical and physiological circles. I believe that people in daily life will never realize it. At dusk yesterday, after being tormented by the road all day, I finally realized that when I saw a small mountain ridge in front of me, there was no shadow of the mountain, and only an open sky remained. At the same time, I was too hungry to take a step, so I almost subconsciously stopped by the side of the road, reached out and took out the only 2 steamed buns left in my bag that were frozen hard. But when I brought the steamed buns to my mouth, I immediately realized that I had to climb up to the top of the beam to see if there was really no mountain in front of me, and how far it was from the people, before I could decide whether to eat the 2 steamed buns separately. So I put away the steamed buns, ordered myself to climb up to eat, and continued to push the cart to climb to the top of the beam. Fortunately, the view from the top of the beam really opened up, and the afterglow of the sunset glow was fading to the west with little ups and downs. I was so happy that I forgot to be hungry, and the chilly evening wind blowing through my sweaty clothes also made me feel cold and comfortable. I stopped on a gravel pile at the top of the beam, ate frozen steamed buns and drank cold water, but my heart was moved by the flatness of the earth for a long time. How nice the plain is, it's unobstructed. It seems that people all over the world can see each other, no matter how far away they are, they can hear each other's voices and laughter, and the hearts of people on the plain must be open to each other so that you can see the truth at a glance. Why did I take this road repeatedly by train, but didn't feel anything, let alone know how heavy the mountains are, while the plains are so light? Our ancestors, they also walked on 2 feet like me, but why did they leave the plains and go far into the mountains instead? Why don't they get together with the same kind to guard the flat? Just because human beings love the flat land, eventually the population on the plain became overpopulated and could not bear it. Our ancestors who could no longer live had no choice but to take their children and leave their hometowns, regardless of the wildness of the road and the hundreds of times of hardships of the natural conditions, and walk towards the depths of the mountains and deeper. In the mountains, they not only found the fertile land and various treasures on which to live, but also found the freedom of the emperor is far away from the mountains. Therefore, they would rather accept the ups and downs and difficulties of nature than go out of the mountains. People meet death where they live, but find life where they die. For this reason, I hate the mountain and thank the mountain, and thank the plain but hate the plain. What kind of contradiction is this? There is a level of existence in the ups and downs of nature, but the levelness of nature is full of precipitous and unevenness made by human beings. I suddenly felt a wave of loneliness hit me. Looking back at my bicycle, my close friend who is as gentle as a horse accompanying me to the end of the world, my tears have fallen on the small mountain ridge with the evening wind. I softly call out to my kind, get out of the mountains, including the mountains of nature and people's hearts, but please don't rely on the cars, trains, planes, and the like in your mind, but like me, step by step to the plain again, come up,